What's up, sports fans? This is the Lucas Ross Sports Channel, and it is time to give you my top 10 most overrated teams heading into the 2024 college football season. Yesterday, I gave you my top 10 most underrated teams for 2024. If you have not seen that video, be sure to go back and check it out right here on the channel from yesterday. Now we're doing the opposite. We're going to give you the overrated teams for 2024. 10 teams that I feel like are being overrated heading into the 2024 season. And how this video is going to work, it's basically not that I think these teams are going to be bad. It's just because they're getting a lot of hype this year. Some of these teams that you're going to see on this list are potentially, like playoff contenders. Some of them are new playoff contenders, and some of them are also, top 5, maybe top 10 teams as well, and definitely probably could win a conference championship. But again, I think these teams are just being overrated just a little bit for 2024. Let's go ahead and get right into this list, though. We'll start from the bottom and work our way to the top. So we start here at number 10. Number 10 for me is Oklahoma. I feel like Oklahoma was definitely underrated last year. They definitely had a better season compared to 2022, but this year they're definitely overrated in my opinion. You look at the schedule this year for Oklahoma. It's a very tough schedule because they are playing in the SEC, of course, this year. They do have a very tough schedule for their first year in the SEC. Playing the SEC, of course, for the first time will be very tough for this team. And you just look at the roster. The offensive side of the football lost a lot of great players from last year. The offensive side of the football is definitely a big concern if you're an Oklahoma fan. Defensively, they do have a decent amount of production coming back there on the defense. I think the defense overall has a chance to be a pretty good defense, but again, the offense is what I'm concerned about the most here for Oklahoma. A lot of the people are putting Oklahoma pretty much in the top 10 in their top 25 polls. I feel like I had Oklahoma just outside the top 10. I feel like I had them in the top 15, but still, I'm not really high on this Oklahoma team as I was when they were in the Big 12. But this Oklahoma team playing in their first year in the SEC, I still think they'll probably win somewhere around 8 games, maybe 9 games. But it's pretty much going to be tough to win 10 games again, especially playing in the SEC. So Oklahoma here at number 10, I feel like they're overrated for 2024. Let's go to number 9 now. That's Tennessee. Tennessee, of course, 9-4 last year in 2023. I definitely picked them to go overrated last year, and that's exactly what they did. They are coming off a bit of a step back from where they were the year before in 2022. This year, I think they're definitely overrated once again. You look at Tennessee's offense, I don't have any concerns about the offense. I think they're going to be like an explosive offense, like how Josh Heupel is with calling the plays. But you look at the offensive line, that is the one area where I have concern about for the offensive side of the football for Tennessee. Lost a really good experience of players there on the offensive line. Can they protect Nico Amaliava at quarterback? Obviously, Nico Amaliava, it's going to be the starting quarterback this year. Joe Milton is gone, so that's definitely going to be not a big loss for Tennessee. I think Nico does have a bright future, but how good is he going to be? That's obviously going to be the question, and how good this offensive line will be for Tennessee, that's obviously going to be the question as well, and the defense as well has a big concern as well. The defensive side of the football, I think, will be a little bit better, but maybe not, maybe one of the best defenses in the country. Definitely not. Obviously, Tennessee, has not really been good on the defensive side of the football in Josh Heupel's first 3 years, but they brought in some transfers to help them out, so maybe that does help them out just quite a bit for Tennessee. But a lot of people are putting Tennessee in the top 10, and also Nico Amaliava is getting a lot of hype as a quarterback, even though he only played 1 game last year, and that was in the Cheez-It Bowl. And again, people are just putting him as a Heisman candidate already. I just don't really think that's going to be the case. I think he still has a long way to go before he can really get better as a quarterback. Again, this year definitely could be a really good season for Nico Amaliava at quarterback. But again, I just don't think he's right there in the Heisman candidate list just yet. So we'll see how he turns out going into 2024. But Tennessee, with all the hype they're getting with Nico Amaliava and, of course, being a top 10 team, Tennessee is definitely overrated in my opinion for 2024. They're number 9 here on this list. Number 8 is Texas A&M. They were 7-6 last year in 2023. I think the Aggies were definitely underrated last year, but they were definitely overrated because they didn't live up to the high expectations that we expected them to be. Texas A&M, I think, is overrated this year just because they're getting a lot of hype this year. A lot of people are putting the Aggies in the top 25 in the preseason poll and definitely in the spring top 25. I'm not really buying that just yet. I know Mike Elko is a pretty good head coach, but I'm not really, sold on him just yet. I think at first year it's definitely going to be a rebuild here for Texas A&M. Plus, they have a very tough schedule. They have to play Notre Dame in the non-conference to begin the season. They do get that game at home, but Notre Dame probably is going to be the better team in that game. So Texas A&M, I think, with all the hype they're getting, they're just a little bit overrated in my opinion. Not saying they're going to be a bad team. Again, it's not really just the fact that I think these teams are going to be bad. It's just because of all the hype they're getting. A lot of people are putting these teams in the top 25 in preseason polls, and that goes for Texas A&M. Texas A&M is being put in the top 25 in preseason polls, and again, I'm not really buying that just yet. If they do prove me wrong, though, and start to win some games, let's say they pull off a big upset against Notre Dame, they probably could be in the top 25 the next weekend, but Texas A&M here, they're definitely being overrated in my opinion for 2024, and they're number 8 here on this list. Moving on to number 7, that's Florida State. They were 13-1 last year, won the ACC championship, of course. They were definitely underrated last year. I definitely overrated them last year because, with all the hype they're getting, this year I'm overrating them again. This won't be the same Florida State team that we saw from last year that won the conference championship, and also definitely going undefeated in the regular season as well. But, they've added some players in the transfer portal. We know how Mike Norvell is with the transfer portal, added a ton of pieces from there, but this team lost so much production from last year. Jordan Travis will be gone, of course, to the NFL. You also got, of course, Trey Benson gone. That's definitely going to be a huge loss there at the running back position, or maybe the wide receiver, with every position he played in last year. But again, Florida State, DJ Uiagalelei coming over at quarterback is definitely a big story. How good will he be under this system of Mike Norvell? We don't really know because he hasn't had a good college career. He does have experience, but just really not been able to get up to that hype just yet. So we'll see if Florida State can definitely have another really good season. But again, it's not going to be the same Florida State team that we saw from last year. This is still, in my opinion, the favorite to win the ACC, but not far behind them are really good teams in the ACC, including Clemson, Miami, and also Louisville. Those 3 teams, just right behind them, and then maybe NC State, and also maybe other teams as well. So Florida State here at number 7. Again, they're definitely overrated in my opinion for 2024. Moving on to number 6, we stay in the ACC. We got Georgia Tech at number 6. They were 7-6 last year. Definitely a big surprise team from last season as well. Georgia Tech, I think, is overrated for 2024. I think last year maybe it was just a fluke. This year, when you look at the schedule, that's the reason why they're on this list. They do play Georgia and Notre Dame both in the non-conference, and they do play, some of the top teams from last year in the ACC on the schedule. So it definitely could be another really tough season for the Yellow Jackets. I think they'll be very competitive in their games, but you look at the roster, the offensive side of the football doesn't really concern me. They do almost return everybody back there on the offensive side of the football, but defensively, they lost a ton of players on that side of the football. So defense might be a struggle, and that's why Georgia Tech is on this list at number 6 as well. Again, I think this team is overrated. Yes, they're coming off a surprise season last year, but was last year just a fluke? I mean, will this year be a really bad season, or will they have a really good season and continue to turn this program around? We'll see what happens, but Georgia Tech here at number 6. Let's go to the top 5 now. At number 5, they got Ole Miss. We're back to the SEC here. They were 11-2 last year. The Rebels coming off a very, very good season last season. But you look at this Ole Miss team this year, they do bring back a good amount of production on both sides of the football. Offensively and defensively, they added a ton of pieces in the transfer portal. And, like I said, I don't really have any concerns about the offense for Ole Miss, but why are they being overrated? Well, because, just all the hype they're getting, obviously being a playoff contender. I mean, they're definitely a playoff contender in my opinion, but a lot of people are putting Ole Miss as a top 5 team, and also maybe just inside the, top 10, and maybe also being an SEC championship contender. I'm not really buying that because Ole Miss does have some tough games on their schedule. They got to play Georgia, of course, at home this year. They got to play LSU as well. And those are 2 games that, Ole Miss can definitely lose to. But Again, Ole Miss, I think, is not going to be a bad team. Like I said, both sides of the football, defensively is where you're concerned about there for the Rebels, but they added some pieces in the transfer portal there on the defensive side of the football. But again, with all the hype that Ole Miss is getting, that's the reason why they're on this list. A lot of people are thinking that this Ole Miss team can challenge Georgia in the SEC and also maybe upset them. I don't really think Ole Miss is definitely the team to challenge Georgia. Maybe there is another team out there like Texas, but that's probably about it. Maybe LSU, maybe also some other teams, but I don't think Ole Miss is the right team to challenge Georgia. Their offense is really good enough to score points on this Georgia team, but again, with their defense, with their struggles on defense over the years, that's the reason why I think Ole Miss is definitely being overrated for 2024. So the Rebels here at number 5. Moving on to number 4, we got Washington. Of course, they were 14-1 last year, winning the Pac-12 championship and also going to the college football playoff, national championship. Lost, of course, a tough one to Michigan. Washington, of course, being overrated this year. A lot of people still have Washington as a top 25 team, perhaps not just in the top 10 or maybe in the top 15, and definitely not in the top 25, to be honest. I don't think Washington is a top 25 team in the preseason just because of the roster turnover and definitely the coaching change. I know this Arizona coach coming over from Arizona last year may change this program, but may not change this year because of all the roster turnover. The offensive side of the football lost a lot of good players on the wide receiver position. And then definitely at quarterback, Michael Penix, of course, one of the best quarterbacks in the Pac-12 from last year, maybe besides Bo Nix of Oregon. But again, this Washington team is just going to lose a lot of production. The defense is what I have the most concern about here for the Huskies. So again, with all the roster turnover and obviously, Washington still being put in preseason top 25s, that's the reason why the Huskies here are overrated for 2024. So that's how they ended up being here at number 4. Number 3 is Arizona, another team, of course, coming over from the Pac-12 into the Big 12 this year. Of course, the Wildcats were 10-3 last year. They were definitely a big surprise team, in my opinion. They were definitely underrated last year, but this year they're definitely overrated, in my opinion. And I'm not saying that Arizona is going to be bad. It's just because of the coaching change. They did lose a lot of players on the defensive side of the football, some really good, talented players, but I think the offense has a chance to be pretty good. They got their quarterback returning back from last year, but a lot of people are picking this Arizona team to probably win the Big 12 this year and definitely, maybe be a top 10 team. I'm not really buying that, though. I think Arizona's just outside the top 10. I think they're definitely a top 15 team, but again, with all the coaching change and everything, that's the reason why I think Arizona could be overrated for 2024. But I think they'll definitely be a Big 12, top contender and also maybe a dark horse contender in the Big 12. Again, the Big 12 is going to be very competitive this year, and a lot of these teams are going to beat up on each other. But again, based off of Arizona having the coaching change and some losses on the defensive side of the football, that's the reason why I do have the Wildcats here at number 3 on my most overrated list here for 2024. So Arizona at number 3. We move on to number 2 now, and that's Alabama. And hardly you don't see Alabama on this list every year because they're always underrated and definitely like a really good, team in every year because, Nick Saban, of course, was there over the years. But now Nick Saban is gone. I think Alabama is definitely overrated for the first time in a while. You look at this roster, they do lose a lot of players from the transfer portal and obviously a lot of recruits that they had before Nick Saban retired. So this is definitely a new start to a new roster here for Alabama. It's not a rebuild of the program and also for the, SEC and everything. But Alabama is still going to be Alabama. They're still going to be a very talented team, but how talented will they be? I mean, the offensive side of the football I think will be really good. Jalen Milroe returns at quarterback. But you look at the defensive side of the football, lost a lot of players, of course, from the transfer portal. That's definitely going to be a huge loss here for this Alabama team. You look at, Kalen DeBoer, he does have experience at Washington. Like I said, he was really good at Washington, but how good will he be in the SEC? I mean, that's going to be the question here that everybody wants to know, but also, the reason why Alabama is being overrated just a little bit is because of, everybody's putting them in the top 5 and also pretty much, being them a playoff contender again as well. They are a playoff contender as well every year, but they're also like a top 5 team every year because it's always Alabama. I mean, Alabama is one of the top programs and also the top teams in the country. So again, I think Alabama is definitely overrated, right here at number 2 in my most overrated list, just because of all the roster turnover and the players that they lost in the transfer portal. And obviously the reason why they're also overrated is just because they're being, predicted to be a top 5 team as well. So Alabama here at number 2, but they're not the most overrated team for 2024. That brings me to my number 1 team. The number 1 most overrated team heading into the 2024 season is going to be the Michigan Wolverines. Of course, the defending national champions. They were 15-0 last year. You look at Michigan this year, a lot of roster turnover. Jim Harbaugh, of course, head coaching now into the NFL. So it's a new head coach this year for this Michigan team. It's not a rebuild of the program, but it's a rebuild of the roster. They lost a lot of players from last year's team. Blake Corum gone. Of course, J.J. McCarthy gone at quarterback. Lost a really good load of players on the offensive line. And also wide receiver positions. Defense looks to be okay, though. I think the defense will be okay, but it's just not going to be the same defense that we saw for Michigan in the last 2 years. So, again, I think Michigan, that's the reason why they're overrated. And also another reason why they're overrated is just because a lot of people are putting Michigan in their preseason top 5 and also definitely being a top 10 team as well. But they could definitely be a preseason, top 15 team just because of all the roster turnover. I still think Michigan will be a top 10 team in the preseason, but, as the year goes on, I think Michigan will definitely, maybe drop out of the top 25 just because of all the roster turnover. So again, Michigan is the most overrated team heading into 2024, and those are my top 10 most overrated teams heading into the 2024 college football season. Let me guys know what you think about this list. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know down in the comments below. Thanks for watching this video, and stay tuned here for more sports content videos on my Lucas Ross Sports Channel.